Jalen Hurts is one of the sources of a fantasy-rich matchup week in and week out. We are going to do a little bit fantasy-rich, fantasy-poor, essentially the games that matter the most for the fantasy world, for good or bad. And who better to join us than Roto World's Pat Kerrane. Pat, what's going on, man? This is a beast of an article you write this week. I am mesmerized. Yeah, we are going to try to put this into a condensed segment, but definitely get on Roto World and check out all of Pat's work. And let's start with the Eagles, who are 5-point favorites at Arizona. So that's a pretty significant line, Jay, when traveling. More importantly, the over-under 48.5 in this game. Pat, is the Eagles' offensive output right now sustainable?
Well, it's interesting because they showed another gear last week. They showed that they can go run heavy. They actually went quite run heavy against Jacksonville. Hurts did have a down game, but the fact that they have this additional run heavy gear is pretty interesting. But as you noted, Jay, I think we throw out a lot from last week. There was rainy weather, poor conditions. If you look at Hurts even counting last week, he's the 6th most efficient quarterback in the league, according to EPA per play, 8th most accurate. He's obviously deadly as a rusher. He now gets a Cardinals defense that just played Baker Mayfield and still does not rank well. They rank 29th in defensive DVOA. They 26th in expected points added allowed per drop back, 31st in passing success rate. This is a passing defense that the Eagles should be able to take full advantage of. When you look at a fantasy-rich environment, you want a team on the other side that's going to be able to compete a little bit. Maybe the Cardinals need to be pushed to produce some fantasy value. I think the Eagles will do their part there. But the Cardinals showed a little bit of life last week. Murray was the 6th most accurate quarterback last week. They were extremely slow on offense to start the year. They've picked up the pace a little bit. You also get an Eagles defense that I think could be a little bit overrated. They've played Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins, Carson Wentz. They did very well against Trevor Lawrence, but that was obviously in the rain. I think the Eagles pass rush might be a little bit inflated in particular, and Murray's been quite good actually when in a clean pocket. And you also have Darius Slay, who has a chance to play in this game but could be out. So the Cardinals, I don't think they're going to push and make this game super fun on their own, but the Eagles should push them to the air, and then the Cardinals might be kind of surprised at how well they're doing when they pass the ball.
When you hear all that, Jay, obviously we're looking at this as a matchup the Eagles should control, and we know they can lean on the ground attack when they control the game. So what do you take away when you look at Miles Sanders having such a really hot start to the season, obviously a really, really big week, and what that means, a new dimension into this Eagles offense that the expectations were pretty tempered.
Yeah, the much maligned Miles Sanders, who all of a sudden, all he does is produce. And I think you touched on the key thing kind of there, which is that the Eagles, they ground out these games as soon as they get these big leads. They've run the ball 50 times last week. Like, that's just what they do. Jalen Hurts, by the way, is 3rd favorite for MVP. Amazing that is. Like, he's 50-1 before the season, but this team is, they're basically a juggernaut. They're like even money to get the 1 seed in the NFC, and with that is going to come a lot of touchdown opportunities for Miles Sanders. I think his line is too small. Like, it's 5. It's pushing towards 5.5. Just think about this. Like, the Chiefs in week 1 at Arizona was 6.5-point favorites. I think Arizona has gotten worse since week 1, at least what we thought of them. And I think that the Eagles are about the level of the Chiefs coming into the season. So I think this line should be 6 or 6.5. And I think that the Cardinals, who they were almost punting on 4th and goal against the Panthers. Like, they look better, and they moved the ball against Carolina, but I do think there are still some problems in Arizona.
Pat, it obviously takes 2 teams to hit that over line of 48.5. So let's talk about the Cardinals a little bit. The offense obviously due to get going. There were big expectations even with the DeAndre Hopkins suspension coming into the beginning, the first 6 games of the season. Hollywood Brown owning the target share. We saw Rondale Moore last week. Are there some reasons to be a little bit more optimistic going forward?
I think so. Marquise Brown has not lived up to the volume that he's getting. His yards per target is lower than you'd expect based on where he's getting targeted on the field. He's getting targeted not super deep downfield. His average depth of target is 10.7, which is consistent with kind of a classic number 1 option. But he does have 43% of the Cardinals' air yards. He's got a 26% target share. Kyler really looking to him over the last couple weeks. Yeah, I think if you're playing this from the Cardinals side, Marquise Brown's got to be a part of that.
Okay. All right, fellas, let's move over to Bengals at Ravens. Same point total for this game, 48.5. The Ravens are favored by 3, which essentially tells you it's a neutral matchup because the Ravens are home. The big one here, Pat, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I mean, this is a rematch of the game last year where Burrow threw for 525 yards and 4 touchdowns. So, I don't know if it'll be that fantasy rich, but we are looking at a Ravens team that is a bit of a pass funnel this year. Teams are throwing against them at the 6th highest rate, according to pass rate over expected. They were a massive pass funnel last year, not quite as big this year, but you're still getting that same effect, which is helpful because the Bengals are a slightly pass-first team. They're not like a aggressively pass-first team, but passing is the only thing they're doing well right now. They cannot run the ball. They're having issues run blocking as well as pass blocking. On the pass blocking front, you do have a Ravens pass rush that is not particularly good. So I think that you're going to have Burrow being able to, he'll take his sacks and he'll make some mistakes, but I also think he's going to have a big day through the air, which should help push the Ravens. And the nice thing about the Ravens is that we don't even need them to be pushed. They are a pass-first team this year. They were a pass-first team last week, even in bad conditions against Buffalo. So if you look at a Ravens team that's the 5th most pass-heavy team in the league, they might actually be pushing the Bengals just as much as the Bengals are pushing them. The Bengals have a good defense. They're good against the run and the pass, though, so it's really up to the Ravens how they want to attack. And they've shown us this year that they prefer to attack through the air.
Yeah.
Jay, we knew coming into the season Jamar Chase first-round pick expectations, but T. Higgins has been an absolute star for the Bengals so far, which just makes you buy in a little bit more that Burrow is fully back on track, I think.
Yeah, just Zach Taylor just needs to let him throw the ball more instead of running Joe Mixon into the line for 2 yards every time, as he was intent on against Miami. I do think with this matchup, it is hard to carry over matchup trends year over year and everything, but the weakness of this Baltimore secondary has been speed. We saw what Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle did to them in week 2, absolutely carved them up. We saw what Jamar Chase did to them both times last year when they played. So that to me is the most interesting thing here is are Chase and Higgins and Boyd, are they just going to destroy that Baltimore secondary like they did last year? And also, is Zach Taylor just going to give Joe Burrow the chef's hat and just let him go to work instead of this obsession with running Joe Mixon 20 times?
Well, if the Ravens find themselves in that situation, they're going to have to throw the ball. And we know what Mark Andrews can do, but I think the biggest question right now, guys, is Rashad Bateman's inconsistency at best, the lack of targets. Devin Duvernay is the guy that seems to score the touchdowns. And the biggest note for me is, since Bateman's gotten into the league, it feels like little injuries, or sometimes even bigger ones, have limited how much he can do leading up to the games, and it's carrying over, obviously, throughout the game.
Yeah, and he hasn't really run all the routes this whole season, and this is before he was dealing with a foot injury. So I would expect him to be out there in a somewhat limited role. The interesting thing about Bateman, though, is he has been a deep threat this year. He's kind of taken over that role in the offense from Marquise Brown. And so even if he's out there in a limited capacity, I think he'll help the offense because he's going to draw coverage deep. You want Bateman out there if you're playing Mark Andrews.
Yeah. Rashad Bateman, 11 receptions in 4 games on a pass-heavy offense. That's just not enough for whatever is wrong with him. But he's basically become he's Robbie Anderson at the moment in terms of he's a better version of that. But it's boom or bust. He gets the 75-yarder against the Dolphins. He gets the 55-yarder against the Jets. Outside of that, there's nothing.
That's it. Yeah. Last point in this game, J.K. Dobbins is back, and we knew this would be a ramp-up for the fact of how they were handling him over summer, the fact that nobody knew if he'd be active week 1. Lamar kind of slipped that it would be a couple weeks. So now he's back. But when do we get to the point that J.K. Dobbins is established in your fantasy lineup week in and week out with trust?
Yeah, I don't think it's this week. It could be soon, though. I mean, Justice Hill now dealing with an injury, I believe a hamstring. So
the Gus Bus is back, though.
That's true. Okay, so but I think Dobbins is going to continue to work up and ramp up. This, I think, is probably not the game environment where he's going to go off, but maybe there's some touchdowns for him to score like we saw last week.
Yeah, I mean, 13 carries, 4 receptions, that's a lot more than I would have expected from Dobbins last week. Really strong PFF grade as well across the board. So I think Dobbins is back. It's just Gus Edwards is the unfortunate variable if you're a Dobbins, if you have him on your roster.
All right, last fantasy-rich game of the week here, Pat. Falcons at Buccaneers. Bucs are 9-point favorites, which is really disrespectful when you think how the Falcons have seemingly hung around week in and week out. 9-point favorite. More importantly for this game, the over-under is set at 48. There's a theme. These point totals in the fantasy-rich games hover close to the 50-point mark. Brady looked right with his weapons back last week. You feel comfortable that translates again against Atlanta?
I am, yeah. And in terms of fantasy-rich, we're grading on a curve here with the Falcons. We know that they want to be extremely run-heavy. They were extremely run-heavy, as you guys talked about earlier last week. When you look at teams that have been that run heavy, we're talking about teams like the Browns, like the Bears. Now the Buccaneers, I don't think they're going to let them get away with that. The Buccaneers were extremely pass-heavy last week, finally, with all the weapons back. They're going to be pushing the Falcons. Now, maybe the Falcons played ball control while the game's close, but I think with that point spread, we do expect the Buccaneers to be playing from ahead. Brady now facing a Falcons defense that has a bottom 2 pass rush, so he's going to be able to sit back and pick this defense apart. I think there'll be volume on the Buccaneers side with that setup. I think we're going to see a lot of receptions from the Buccaneers. You want to play your Buccaneers pass catchers for sure, and then maybe we get something from Kyle Pitts, Drake London on the other side as they're forced to the air in the second half.
What a world we're living in where last week the Falcons supported 3 running backs in one game, all having fantasy value.
Great Caleb
Huntley. Because Cordarrelle Patterson got involved as well as Caleb Huntley and Tyler Algier. So I don't think that's going to happen again. I don't think they're going to be able to support 2 either. But, I do think that Bucs game against the Chiefs, to me, I came out of that game almost feeling better about the Bucs for the rest of the season just because of how they moved the ball on offense. Yes, they gave up 41 points, but it's more like 34 because of the fumble on the kickoff. And then, we know the Bucs defense will be good. It's been good for 3-4 years. But the fact that they were able to move the ball so well, and more importantly, the fact that Chris Godwin just was Chris Godwin and got 10 targets, I do think that we're going to go back to a world of the Bucs just being a blockbuster offense, and that's why Tom Brady plus 1,800 to lead the league in passing, I think, is implied.
One last thing I'm watching in this game is definitely the usage of Rachaad White. You had to be a little patient before he got on the field, but we know Leonard Fournette always dealing with little injuries. The Bucs may be finally playing with some big leads, and they get Rachaad White going. We'll see how the game script goes. But Pat, looking at the other backfield, Jay hinted at the Falcons' backfield. Cordarrelle Patterson on the IR. Caleb Huntley comes out of nowhere. Tyler Algier, rookie running back, that there were some expectations for. How do you see the usage shaking out between these two guys as Cordarrelle goes to the IR?
So it looked like Huntley might be the goal line back based on the way they were used. I believe he had 3 carries inside the red zone, scored a touchdown. And before that, it was Algier who got them into scoring range. So that's kind of my lean, and then maybe Algier's in on passing downs a bit more. But if Algier has the passing downs, then it makes me more interested in him this week because, again, I'm banking on the Buccaneers to push the Falcons to pass a little bit.
Absolutely. All right. Time to do the fantasy poor matchups. We start with the fun, right? You get the good news out of the way first. You go to the bad news. Week 5's fantasy poor matchups. We're kicking off with Cowboys at Rams. The Rams only 4.5-point favorites against another week of Cooper Rush. Did not look like the Rams could get anything going on Primetime this week. The over-under only set at 43. Pat, is there any reason to believe that Matthew Stafford and this Rams offense gets back on track?
This is a tough spot for them. I think they're going to be trying to score just as many points as they have to win this game. I don't know that they'll need to score all that many, though, because when you look at the Cowboys, they've been consistently run first all season, kind of regardless of matchup. The Rams are very strong against the run. So, it makes sense for the Cowboys to move to the pass here, but I don't think they're going to do that with Cooper Rush. I don't think they're going to be aggressive with him under center. And so what you're likely looking at from the Cowboys is a attack that's probably a bit more run-heavy than it should be and is inefficient. So on the other side, if the Rams are looking at the Cowboys kind of struggling against their defense, I think they're also going to be pretty conservative. They've tried to get their run game going all year. They have not been able to do that, but teams are running against the Cowboys at a very high rate. The Cowboys aren't great against the run. They're not terrible. The reason that teams are going against them on the ground at such a high rate is because they don't want to deal with the pass rush. And I think that given that the Rams rank 32nd in PFF's pass blocking grades right now, they're going to want no part of this pass rush.
Feast.
Micah Parsons, exactly. So I think that you're going to be looking at a Rams team that's trying to hide their offensive line from Micah Parsons. I still think they'll get the win here, but this could devolve into kind of a slugfest.
Yeah, as you see Matthew Stafford's the first 4 games of the season so far, man, guys, it has not been pretty. You see the 6 interceptions, has only thrown 4 touchdowns. He's not thrown a touchdown in the last 2 weeks. Jay, it has been wildly disappointing from the Super Bowl champ. Super Bowl hangover at its best. Right now.
Exactly. Really, really drowsy this following
when you
morning.
Drink too much Boone's Farm, according to Matthew Berry.
Exactly.
A beverage I had never heard of
Boone's
in my
Farm.
lifetime.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. That liquid. Look, I think with the Rams, they didn't have a 20-yard play in the entire game against the Niners, and it's not so much that Yeah, they couldn't block Nick Bosa, and that Niners defense is the best in the league, I think. I do think that the bigger concern, though, in a way, is that they just seemed horribly managed in that, like, why are they huddling up with 4.5 minutes left and snapping with 3 seconds left on the play clock when they're down 2 scores? Why are they throwing the ball to Cooper Kupp with 40 seconds left in a meaningless game? Like, it just seemed everything was wrong. Why can't Jalen Ramsey tackle anymore in the open field? What's wrong with him? Like, it's just, right now it's just Kupp and Aaron Donald, and there's nothing else on that Rams team. So, I mean, yeah, I would have guessed that the total on this game before the season would have been almost like a touchdown higher. But obviously Cooper Rush and this Rams offense, which is just bad at the moment. So they'd want to get it right this week.
Only going down from here, Packers 8.5-point favorites against the Giants. The 3-win Giants are 8.5-point underdogs in London. The over-under is set at 41.5. Obviously, not huge expectations for the Giants that have had quarterback woes in terms of injuries, although Saquon Barkley has had an incredible year. But let's start with Green Bay. It feels like Romeo Doubs the last 2 weeks is the guy that everybody hoped for over summer. And even Christian Watson, now with the injury behind him, is starting to get involved.
Yeah, and, that's exciting, but if you think about the offensive volume here for the Packers, it could be very low. They've been firmly run first this year. This is a team that's typically been a very pass first team. They've kind of transitioned here with the wide receivers working in and gone run first. And the Giants aren't very good against the run. So I think the Packers, they might be eyeing this matchup up as one where they establish Aaron Jones, they establish A.J. Dillon. They're not super worried about an injured Daniel Jones, or maybe not Daniel Jones playing. We'll have to see. And they kind of just grind out a win here. I think even if the Packers do have some success early on and get in the end zone, hopefully with Doubs, they're still probably going to salt away this game pretty quickly. And then you look at the Giants side of this. I mean, they really have no choice. They have to rely on Saquon Barkley. That's their only option.
He might have to throw in this game.
he might be the one throwing. Yeah.
Play cornerback?
Yes.
But, you look at the Packers, they are a run funnel. Teams are running against them at a high rate, so this actually sets up okay for the Giants. I think the Packers, they should try to get the Giants off script. They should be trying to be aggressive because the Giants, they're not going to have a counterpunch, but the Packers have played slow consistently now for 3 years. They're starting to go run heavy. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to play into the matchup that the Giants defense presents and go run heavy here. I know this is an extremely low total, but I could see this going under.
Yep, 41.5. It is very low, but I would also skew to the under if I had to pick a side. I do think with Romeo Doubs, like if he just catches that touchdown at the death, then he's probably favorite for Offensive Rookie of the Year, and we're talking about him as the next guy in Green Bay, and he just doesn't hold on to it, which is a part of the rookie receiver experience, and that happens, as Aaron Rodgers knows all too well with Christian Watson in Week 1 as well, dropping the 75-yard walk-in touchdown. With Saquon, I do think that the Packers have shown their rushing defense that even if they know that you're rushing it every single time, they still can't stop you. Yep. Because what David Montgomery did against them and what Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Harris did. So I would not be worried about Saquon at all, despite being an 8.5-point dog.
Yeah, despite significant draft investments in that front seven this offseason, the Packers' run defense has really, really struggled. So if you could feel anything good about the Giants in London, it is still Saquon Barkley.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.